Why did he take the ring and put the ring back on and keep it?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, yeah.
So there's
Brünnhild, die erste Frau. Hi, I'm Eric Greene, and I'll be singing the role of Gunther in Richard Wagner's Götterdämmerung. Gunther is a prince. Number one, I mean, he's the heir of all of what the Gebisch has at this what they have at this point. But he's very insecure. He's very he's weak in decision making, and you know, he's just not a strong leader. But he's a leader nonetheless. But he and his sister are, I think, are very close, and he and his brother Hagen, which is his half brother, we have a little bit of there's always some type of unrest in our relationship, but I depend on Hagen to validate the decisions that I make, to give me suggestions about things, you know, and so I'm dependent on him, but I'm never weak under him, you know what I mean? I'm just not secure as a leader, and even as a person, I mean, there are things that I think that Gunther is ashamed of. The fact that he's not married, that he hasn't found a wife, that he does have a problem with his self-image and what others think of him. So, you know, and these qualities, you know, it's so funny, you can always bring them to modern time. For the last week, we've been just getting into the role from a dramatic standpoint, musically first, I think we did, and then after that we started working with Peter from a dramatic standpoint. It was very different. This setting is very different. You're not able to interact with your colleagues, but you're playing everything front. So it's that's been it wasn't a huge adjustment, but it is when you're singing to someone else and you're looking for that reaction to, you know, to get your reaction. It's kind of weird. Today, had an opportunity to work with John Tomlinson, Sir John Tomlinson again, which he's really not that at all, not Sir John. He's very, very approachable, and I tell him that it's been inspiring, informative, and just it's been great, you know, working with him. And he says, "Oh wow, those are so great adjectives you use." But no, I really mean it. I really do mean it. Just to have someone to impart who's done so much of this type of repertoire, this Wagner repertoire, and the German rap itself, and it's great, you know, because we have the same type of approach to producing sound, and you know, and him being, you know, very seasoned in his work, you know, he looks right at me and say, "You're not doing this," you know. So all of my faults are, you know, really very much so pronounced with, you know, he's able to see them and then pick them out. Then I make the adjustment and it's great. So it's been, you know, that's really wonderful. I think that's been a great asset.
Reaching the final part of the cycle is something I've been sort of dreaming about for quite a few years now. It's very difficult to imagine that we've really reached this point after so much time. It's a colossal journey. It's taken up quite a lot of my life. I think there's also a sort of sense of relief that we've got to this point and that we're winding up the story. It's a sort of piece because there's so much musical material that's carried from one opera to the next. you're in a way reacquainting yourself each year, each summer, with some of the same music that you've had the previous year, but in a rather different form. And it's very nice to be sort of squaring all the circles and wrapping things up. Conducting Götterdämmerung presents the same sort of challenges that the other operas do, in the sense that for a conductor it's the maintaining a huge arc from start to finish. There is so much detail in there, but at the same time you mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture. So it's in a sense not sort of not failing to see the wood for the trees. And Götterdämmerung has its own challenges, which are, it is actually bigger than any of the others, and it's a more consistently sophisticated piece. Musically it's very interesting because Siegfried, the previous opera in the instalment, the last act of Siegfried was written at a slightly later date than the first two acts, and you can really tell that it's more complex musically. It takes a lot more intense rehearsal time than the other two acts of Siegfried, I've found. And interestingly, Götterdämmerung, which is more chronologically written at the same sort of time as the last act of Siegfried, presents you with those complexities, but right from the beginning to the end. The format that we've done the ring cycle in has worked unbelievably well, I think, more than perhaps we'd ever expected. It doesn't require such a level of preparation necessarily for members of the audience. I'd very much like to think that people can arrive in the concert hall off the street, and the orchestra, of course, is right there in front of you, completely contrary to the composer's wishes. He wanted the orchestra to be heard and not seen. But because we've had this format, we could never have done these pieces in the theatre because the orchestra's too big for the pit space. So we've made a big feature of the orchestra, and that I think is a big plus. And it's certainly been a different way of doing it, if you like, unencumbered by sort of sophisticated directorial concepts and all about the storytelling. And I would like to think that Wagner would appreciate that.
Well, now that we're approaching the last part of the cycle, which of course is Götterdämmerung, how does it feel? It feels like we've been doing this for a long time, because it's been going on for 4 years. But this is very much the climax in every sense. It's the largest. It's the largest of all four pieces, both musically and in terms of time and in terms of what it's trying to say. So it's a huge thing. We did a run through of the piece on Friday, and I think that was the first time really that shows you just how huge it is. It's also the first of them that actually uses chorus, so that's very exciting. And it also has a very complicated story. I mean, they all have complicated stories, but this in a way is the one that literally takes it full cycle. And there's a lot of very tricky things to get around in terms of storytelling. The Ring project has been very successful so far. We have the final part to go, and I'm obviously hoping that success will be continued. But certainly the response that I've had from people is that they've really enjoyed the clarity of the narrative. It's a pretty difficult narrative to actually tell in any terms, and a lot of people have felt that the reduced staging of it has actually made it clearer in terms of understanding the story, getting to know the characters, and the stress for me has been on each individual character, showing us what and who that character is, and I think that's that's been bounced back from audiences. They've been coming up saying, we really understood it, we really like it, we like having it told to us in this way. And of course the music is incredibly powerful. Having performers in front of the orchestra, having the orchestra in view, not something that Wagner wanted to happen. He always wanted to hide the orchestra away, although I suspect he might feel different about it now. And I think that makes it a very exciting event. I mean, I seek to create I think I've probably said this before in interviews, but I mean, I hate the phrase semi-staged because it sounds like an apology, and I regard this as being a fully staged concert version of the piece, but very much a piece of theatre in its own right, and that seems to have had a huge response. I hope it will continue with Götterdämmerung.
My name is Orla Boylan and I play Gudrune in Götterdämmerung. It's amazing when you don't have eye contact with people. In this production in the semi-stage production, we all have to face out to the audience. So basically, you're almost looking into the darkness to address the person that you're talking to. And what we have found is that it takes amazing energy to do that. And the only thing is you don't get energy back from somebody. So it's actually quite tiring to do these productions, semi-staged, because you just don't have the play-off of somebody else. And it's a most unusual situation to find yourself in, to maintain that concentration when you're getting nothing back from anybody else. So it's unusual in the fact that we don't do a lot, we don't move a lot, but it's almost twice as exhausting. The accessibility to the audience, that's what I feel is so different. We often hear of opera houses which have surtitles to aid the audience, but here we have the narration, which is fantastic, and it opens the whole story up to them. So I feel the whole combination of the narration, the surtitles, the lighting, and us we're all dressed in black, so we feel very part of the whole story. I think the whole thing together will give a great sense of the whole piece to the audience without feeling in any way austere to them, because I feel a lot of people will be turned off Wagner because it has this reputation to being so off limits to a lot of people, but I think this is very much for everybody.
My name is Alwyn Mellor and I'm singing BRUNNHILDE in Götterdämmerung. The immolation scene in Götterdämmerung is the thing that everybody waits for, and in many senses is probably the most famous part of the whole ring. I mean, it shouldn't be like that, but I think because it's the end of 4 operas, an audience, if they've been to everything, are hugely dedicated and they're waiting for that big finish, because the immolation scene is a sort of précis of everything that's happened in the ring, musically and emotionally. You've got all the different themes of the other characters, all the themes that Wagner wrote that represent different aspects of life and emotion. And yes, it's huge because of the journey of Brunhilde that I've talked about, the emotional journey just in that scene. It's a self-sacrifice, the immolation, and she does the right thing in the end, but I think what she's had to go through to make that decision is really hard. So it's not just a vocal marathon, really, singing the immolation. It's also an emotional marathon, because suddenly everything that you've been talking about for the last however many hours of 3 operas as Brunhilde are conjured up into those last 20 minutes of the opera. Yes, it's a difficult scene, but in many ways it's not the most difficult, because you're vocally and physically warmed up really well by then. You're not at the very beginning of the act. You've had an interval between acts 2 and 3, and no, it's a kind of elation, I think, when you actually go into that scene and, you know, seeing the dead Siegfried, and suddenly she knows what she has to do. So it's all those different elements, I think, that come together. And yes, it's you go into it with a feeling of knowing what has to be done, not just as Brunhilde, but as yourself, you know, me as Alwyn. And yes, and I think in the right hands, and that's what we have here, we have a wonderful orchestra and conductor in Richard Farnes. We're able to find all the colours and nuances and use of text so that the audience don't miss out on anything, and we have lots of visual aspects in this format as well. So I think there will be fireworks at the end.